Did you know that making yourself available, with air quotes there, is a really simple way to make your freelance clients super happy? And being available simply means responding quickly, being willing to hop on a last minute call, or jumping to solve a problem, even though it's after hours. Now, yes, there is a fine line. I don't want you to bend over backwards 24/7 for your clients. Boundaries are healthy, and you want to be mindful of setting expectations that you can't always drop everything to put out their fire. But there's a balance. And when you go just a little bit above and beyond to make yourself available, it can go really far with impressing your freelance clients. This is just one of the many topics you'll hear in this episode with Alex Massey. Alex owns a sustainable pajama brand called Charles William Alexander, and he works exclusively with freelancers, including one of my fast students, pattern maker Alexandra Agreda. In our conversation, Alex shares how he started his fashion brand, some of the things freelancers have done to impress him, and how he manages working with people around the world from Australia to the UK to the US. If you're wondering how to surprise and delight your clients and how to manage things like protos, samples, and productions across the globe, you're going to love this conversation. Let's get to it. Welcome to the podcast, Alexander. Quickly, can you just introduce everybody, yourself to everybody, and let us know who you are and what you do in the fashion industry?
So my name's Alex, and I'm from a company called Charles William Alexander. We're a very niche, basically pajama and underwear brand that basically all produce our products in the USA, and we sell all over the world. And one of our sort of founding ethos or things was that we wanted to produce sustainable, purposeful pajamas, and pretty much as a focus on basically making things in the US or in closer to home. And the brand's actually, the vibe of the brand or the actual style, it's quite a premium regal type London vibe, being sort of Marylebone, central London in its style. But the actual, the brand itself, just sort of, I'm being Australian, it's sort of, I wanted to have a brand that tied my favorite places in the world or where I have family, and that's in the UK, Australia, or the US.
Okay.
So I wanted a brand that created that link between my favorite places and countries, and pretty much could use the best of those plaers. So that's where the three pillars of the brand being, past, the present, the future, are as part of it. So yeah, that's
cool.
That's a little bit about it.
Okay, cool. So you work, well, at least with one freelancer I know, Alexandra Agreda, who's one of my fast students, to help you with your brand and maybe others. And we'll talk about that in a second. But I'd love to actually know, what's your background in fashion, or maybe not? Where did you figure out how to kickstart this whole pajama brand?
So my background's actually network engineering and e-commerce.
Not fashion.
No, but also it was part of that was also past life as well. I was in the automotive industry in basically a lot of just-in-time manufacture, a lot of design, a lot of CAD, sort of like basically manufacturing of products.
Yeah.
But in a very, very physical world, in a automotive world. So I did have a connection there to cars and to fashion indirectly, because, quite good connections in the UK in the world of Jaguar Land Rover and Range Rovers. And that's quite a fashion statement. A lot of the car brands these days have moved towards being more viewed as luxury brands over being staple type, just household sort of goods.
Yeah.
They've gone more of a brand ethos in the way they deliver their products. So yeah, a bit of experience around that. And then IT, got me basically a really good way of a kickstart, I suppose you could say, in actually anything to do with development and websites and whatnot.
Sure.
So
Creating an online presence.
yeah, so that's sort of my background. And then on the other smaller, wind back the clock even further, my early experience with fashion was my mum, who basically, her mum and her sister were quite big sewers, and just more hobby, not for commercial reasons. My auntie, though, actually does work for Triumph International, which is a massive bra company based out of Germany.
Yeah.
But so she's the chief one of the high up designers in Australia for that. But so there was a connection in the family, and my sort of experience with mum was making stuff from patterns, which we'd buy like in a company. Spotlight was a company in Australia you could buy all these patterns from. And you used to get them in a little brown bag, and then that would be the picture of it, what you're making on the front, and you know, you'd get it out. And my job was always pinning all these things on the fabric, which took ages, right?
Yeah,
it does. Right?
That's why you use fabric. That's why you use weights.
Well, yeah, but we had these pins, right? And you just sit down on this board on this table and just take out. I think I actually got the crap job, really. It's like she used to do like tons. So, but I think it was like slave labor, perhaps, to me being like, I don't know, because it was like, but you didn't think of that when you were like 10 or like 8, spending time. And I think the really, you know, fun things that I did at one point was I picked like this suit as a kid, and I wanted to wear it to the races, or I wanted it for the races because my dad took horse racing photos and things. And I wanted this like little it was like a sports jacket but made of tweed.
Okay.
And I picked it from like the store, like the actual pattern, and we went and bought the fabric, and the whole process of making this suit took like months.
But tailored clothing is a labor of love.
Yeah, it was. And I remember like even finding the shoulder pads for a little kid were like, we had to put big ones in there because we couldn't find any small ones. And I remember it was like a compromise that was in this suit. To this day, I've still got it somewhere. Yeah. But you know, I suppose that's where the interest came from. Initially, it was like I really like that creation of like something from, you know, from just that picture, whether it was like, you know, and that's sort of where my background was, in the sense I'd had experience.
Okay.
Yeah.
So when did you start your brand?
I started my brand in 2021.
So just about 2 years now.
Yeah.
Okay.
So we don't. So I knew about it. Like I sort of had ideas earlier than that. And I sort of registered domain names and full of ideas, but they were never going to be in pajamas. It was going to be in something else. And then I just sort of was throwing all kinds of ideas around my head. I knew the name, but I didn't know what it was going to be. So I thought of the name before of actually what I was going to make, which is quite an interesting way of doing it.
Yeah, but it's the name is such that it can work for pajamas. It could work for, I mean, you've got women's underwear too. So like it can work for, is broad enough. It was very, the brand can grow, like the brand vibe, the brand, like the way the brand actually evolves will be, you know, once you start that name, you can start to like really polish how you want to experience it. And that's the fun thing, right, of growing a brand. For sure. I think, once you settle on a name, I think everybody starting a brand should always settle on a name. At some point, I don't think you need to straight away, but I do feel, because I've had friends ask me, you know, oh, what should we can't think of a name for our brand and stuff. Like, it'll come to you. It'll come. Yeah, but it's just sometimes you can be lucky. Yeah. Okay. So you started in 2021. And when did you get connected with Alexandra to help you with, I imagine, pattern making and 3D prototyping? And I don't know exactly what she's doing for you, but when and how did you guys get connected? So I was doing some watercolor type drawings with a friend who's in Australia, and she's quite good at quite creative and doing like kids books and cartoons and things, and she was helping me with that. And I had done some basic patterns myself, which were pretty bad, which weren't the best. And I needed help basically getting them something resembling basically a graded spec. And I was chatting to I went onto a freelancer site, which is, you know, quite well known one, Fiverr. Fiverr. Okay. Yeah, and I found someone I think they were in the Caribbean, and they were doing like just basically bulk. It was more just I wanted some graphic placement of all these watercolors on these patterns that I've made, and it just was taking me hours and hours now. So I was like, I'm going to try and get someone to do all this for me. Yeah. And they were like, oh, well, we can help with this, but if you want to do better patterns, this particular person happened to know because she worked with Alex in some other company years ago. And she was in, she was really obscure connection. Like, this was so random.
It's the most random way of finding someone.
Because Alex lives in the US
Yeah, but
and she's
she
in the
had
Caribbean.
lived in the US and worked, and
Oh,
she was like Venezuela or somewhere. She was no, she was Venezuelan. I don't. She basically said, I worked with Alex at this underwear company or something in some area or some.
okay.
And Alex remembered because obviously she knew
Yeah.
the referral. And she said, you need to go to this person because your stuff is too hard for me, basically. Like I'm like, okay, that sounds fine. And then Alex was sort of like, we had first conversations, and that's where we got together. But before that, I'd actually been pushed quite hard by my manufacturer in the States to say that I needed more stringent and more like detailed tech packs and designs and processes because they weren't entertaining sloppy type customers. They just weren't
Oh,
at me. So
yeah. That's
um,
great to hear because a lot of factories will work with you and then your end product comes out not so great because the instructions weren't so great. I've heard some
exactly. So we
stories.
don't do that. Like, we're very strict. And
Yeah.
factory, she's amazing, and like but we keep it like very very structured, and we don't even call time on Teams. We just like need to just be doing business because we don't have time. In manufacturing, you don't have time because everything's
Yeah.
cost.
Yeah. 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 So
Um,
hold on. I want to understand the order of events. So you had these patterns, like sewing patterons, and
yeah,
you were trying to take these watercolor designs and place them on the patterns for
yeah, and it
production.
was through a friend it was through someone I found on Fiverr, and they were like, I can't fully help you with this to make these patterns better. And
Okay, but she recognized that the patterns were not great for production
because I was
and
having,
said,
you
okay.
recognize.
And then at what point did your factory say, hey, we need better tech packs and we need to
Pretty
tidy
much
this
from
up?
the get-go,
Okay. Okay.
And I'd sort of then disappeared off into like all by my own and just left them, because they had lots of things to do. So I'm like, right, well, I've been told pretty much that I need to go away and regroup and not come with
Figure stuff out a little bit
my
before you
stuff
come back.
sorted, right?
Yeah.
So um,
So
I
you DIY'd all that stuff you had sent to them, you
I
had DIY
DIY'd it all.
some tech
I
pack type of thing.
Yeah, I DIY'd it all. And
Okay. And they said,
the
this is not
guy
going to
that,
work.
well, obviously I'd only ever had like patterns that were paper-based patterns in the
Yeah.
past.
Yeah.
So I'd never done anything in a digital type environment or in a more modern type of production environment, maybe you could say.
Yeah. Yeah.
So my experience was always just at home and DIY,
Yeah.
and that's like probably everybody's experience, right? Is everybody
Some people's, yeah. Yeah. And home sewing
start out
patterns
like,
are very different than production.
yeah, and some people start out like with DIY because that's all they know. And then
Sure.
a lot of people that obviously are in the industry get exposed to, yeah, amazing software packages and all kinds of stuff. But that's just not normal for when you're doing it at home because,
Totally.
you know, so I kind of seen it from both angles, which is nice.
Yeah.
But yeah, so that's how we got started, and Alex just tweaked stuff, and we've tweaked stuff and done stuff and built a whole range and collection and different things. And yeah,
So she started with you pretty much at the beginning, like as you were getting the patterns ready and refined and the tech pack more professional to then go back to the factory.
yeah, she
Okay.
pretty much started with me from the get-go, and then
Okay.
she's probably been more involved in the brand than like even it's probably just as much involved with the brand as me in the sense of knowing decisions and like choosing different color, different things, and almost making calls because
Yeah.
I trust her advice
Yeah.
explicitly.
Yeah.
So that's where it's really cool. Like we get along. So I think I'm having to lean on someone because I haven't had this long experience, right? So
Yeah. Yeah. So do you work with any other freelancers or just Alex?
well, so my factory is also freelance.
Oh,
Um,
can you
yeah,
say?
it's actually Satsuma Designs over in
Satsuma
Seattle.
Design. It sounds super familiar.
Yeah, so
Who, what's
so
the
yeah,
name?
Jennifer Porter from Satsuma Designs.
Jennifer Porter. Okay. I swear I
So
know the name. Yeah.
she's very good. I don't know what I haven't, I don't know what her sort of like standing is on. Her main business is uniforms and other things, and I'm not sure how I think whether she has particular clients or she has this sort of client or what. I don't know whether she has a filter on who she sort of has in. But anyway, and I went to her and it was great, and we've done some production and different samples, and there'll be more in the future. Yeah, I'm not sure I'm just not sure how she structures her business in the sense of like she's full freelance or she's like in and out or
Yeah.
Like, I mean, work with freelancers. My whole business is built around freelancers, actually.
Yeah.
Everybody's a freelancer.
Yeah.
Because so like right down to my photos, my friend who does my photos and when we do photo shoots and all kinds of like photo days and whatnot, he's a independent photographer. One of my friends who's a stylist friend she does a lot of stuff, and we have models and all our different like just shoot days and arranging and more than just the coordination of the run sheets for the shoots and I do a lot of the posing and a lot of the stuff to figure out like how people are going to stand and whatnot myself as well with her. Again, she's freelance, does that.
Okay.
And this is actually this is the United Kingdom, which is where I am. So yeah, there's the US people, there's the UK people, and then in Australia I've got a friend who's the lady that does the watercolors and stuff. She's pretty much my brand like sounding board, and everything that I like run through to stay on brand, to keep on brand, to keep everything like within like how I want to structure, how I want to envisage the brand moving forward. I run through her, and we do a lot of the drawings, and any new watercolors and anything like that is done for herself.
Yeah.
So yeah, again, freelance.
Okay.
So yeah.
So I'd love to hear you talk a little bit about, and it sounds like most of your freelancers have come through personal connection. Yeah.
Well, I mean, again, like Jennifer, like from Satsuma, she was found by Google search.
Oh, okay. What did
Yeah.
you search for?
Fashion manufacturers on clothing USA, textile manufacturers.
And just
And I
digging
emailed
through.
about 4 or 5. I just emailed like 10 factories, and it was only until I got her that someone actually replied, and I had to ask. So it's like that was found through like searching. In the UK, yes, friends, known connections. Australia, the lady that did that actually covered a friend's, done all the graphics on a friend's coffee van. She'd done like the layout, the whole stickers, and like the whole like vinyl wrap, and she designed all that. And basically, my friend recommended. So it was again a recommendation.
That was through a connection. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. But I'd say it's 50-50 through connections, through just finding someone online, through searching.
Okay. So talk a little bit about, you work with a lot of freelancers, and you can maybe not name names because you arguably still have ongoing relationships, business relationships with these people, but I'd love to hear some of the good and the bad. Like, what are some things that some of your freelancers have done where you're just like, maybe you've heard this, but something that people teach a lot as in freelancing is like surprise and delight your customers, right? Surprise and delight your client. Like, what can you do to make them feel really special, make them feel really happy? So I'd love to hear like some things that freelancers have done, maybe to surprise and delight you. And it might be something that they didn't even think of, but for you, were like, oh, that was just really nice that you did that. It just made my life easier. And then also I'd love to hear some of the things that they do that maybe drive you crazy, but which is where you might not name names, but start with some of the things that some people do that just feel really good from a client's perspective.
Well, I mean, I think really only got good positive things to say about, in the sense of everybody. I think, you have to be flexible, I suppose, in the sense of time, perhaps maybe so with freelancer to a degree, because of everybody's schedule is their own effectively, and there is no one to take up that work when, they're not, obviously, they might have some family thing on or something like that. Like, right, it's not like we're in a big company. But on a positive note sort of thing, in the sense of I went to one of my freelancers and I visited, like, and I got a whole, like, basically when I checked into my hotel I booked nearby, she'd actually dropped a whole like welcome hamper in like the reception. and obviously I
Wow.
put it in my room on my bed. And I'd come in from the UK, and
Yeah.
it was like local products, local brands for that city, all the like things are synonymous with that particular place that
Oh, I
basically
love this.
linked it to, this is why you're here, this is the like this is us, this is like about us, and this is our city, or this is our home, like even down to an apple, like like
A local apple.
yeah, or it was a US apple probably or something, but I don't know.
Okay.
They're always bigger in the US anyway, right? The apples are bigger
Yeah.
than the apples. They're
Yeah.
huge. So
UK gets a really big apple. Yeah.
that's why. Yeah. So yeah, so that's always a nice surprise. So it's a very personable thing sometimes with freelancers if you get, yeah, it's good. But yeah, no real negative or no nil like I think my only thing would say is, as I said just before, is about schedules. You have to be probably more aware of people's personal lives in some respects with freelancers, because they're not as sort of shielded from days off and sickness like you might be in a company. Whereas in theory, if you were dealing with a big company, someone else should be able to pick up that particular
Yeah.
job.
Yeah.
Whereas if you're the only if you're the only person, like you're relying on one person to deliver you something and they get sick or something happens, then it could potentially be delayed. But in my cases, I've never had those problems, and I'm very lucky to have people that would probably work even when they're sort of not well for me, because they're so lovely. But
Yeah.
like that's what a freelancers normally would do anyway, because they're passionate about what they do. So they
Yeah.
want to, it's not work in a sense to them, because
Yeah.
it's
Well, you might also be a very lovely client, because I was a freelancer for over a decade. And let me tell you, sometimes it's work depending on the client.
yeah, I mean, I'm sure there is, depending on the client.
Yeah.
But yeah. But
Uh,
yeah.
That's awesome. I love that welcome basket idea. Very, very, very thoughtful. Obviously, something that can only be done under very specific circumstances. I'm gonna push you to think a little bit harder, like on just an day-to-day basis. Like, are there any things that some freelancers do that just makes it, and you might not even notice it because it sounds like you have a really great team. But is there anything you could pick out?
Well, I mean, I suppose, being quite flexible I mean, again, I'm probably coming down to like just a bit like about the thing about the sick and not working thing, and slash, that they've got lives, but their connection of after hours, and in the sense of, the calendar or availability, or you can always, well, Alex is really great. Everybody's really good. Like, I can usually, I use Slack for most of my communications with everybody. And everybody's sort of like willing to use that and even converse no matter what, just constantly, even any time of the day effectively. And not to say I'm expecting that or anything like that, but I think it's something that probably goes unnoticed, that you've had a reply at 9 o'clock at night from someone at 9 o'clock at night, their time, yeah, I'm trying to think of some little things, like you say, that might, I mean, I just think that in my case, I've been very lucky with people, and everybody's extremely thorough and delivers what they say on the package or on the box or on the menu. And like, I don't have any sort of surprises, because I don't really want surprises, in the sense of usually the surprises I'll get aren't the ones I
Yeah.
want. But
Yeah.
everything sort of comes as it should, and that's where I think that's that.
Okay. I mean, you made a comment earlier that I perked up a little bit on. You said something like, so Alex does pattern making and does like 3D work and Clo and stuff, but it sounds like you said you run a lot of other things by her, like the color assortment or
Yeah,
things
so
like
I
that.
mean,
So sometimes I think it's even like the freelancer, like if they have an opinion, speaking up and saying something and saying, hey, Alec, I know you guys are both named Alex. So, well, technically, so you, Alexander, like she could just do the patterns and not say anything, or she can say, hey, you know what, actually, Alexander, I think that it would be a little bit better if we did this, even though she hasn't been hired for, like, let's say design or color trend or inspiration or something. Am I on? Is there something there
Yeah,
or
no,
no?
that's right. That is right. There's definitely a degree of, you know, assistance that happens, unbeknown to me a lot of the time, that I might just, ask an opinion just and not think twice. And it's just like,
Yeah.
that's a good one. And take those opinions in a lot of cases.
Yeah.
So it's that's always appreciated, and it does go, I suppose it is noticed, but not so much. But yeah, it's, I suppose you just don't think about it as something that's you think is normal. After you start working time and time again with
Yeah.
freelance, you just start to, I want to be able to bounce ideas off someone. If I can't do
Yeah.
that, I feel
Yeah.
empty. There's that space is,
Yeah.
yeah.
I mean, I bring it up just because, I mean, I've been teaching people how to freelance in fashion for like 6 years now. And so I've worked with a lot of freelancers, and I see a lot of people asking questions about, like, well, they didn't hire me for that. So do I need to like charge extra, or like that's not part of the project scope that I put together? Like, sort of like where to draw the line on what to give advice on or not. And like, when does it start to lean into, hey, if you want me to, and I'm not saying this is the case with Alex, but like, if you want me to help with design and trend and stuff, then like I need to put together another proposal. And so I think there's a lot of people out there who, depending on the relationship and sort of the energy, who might sort of like put a block to that and be like, well, if you want me to help with all of that, then I can put together something else. And there's a balance, right? Because a client, not saying you do this, but a client could maybe start to lean really heavily on that freelancer for that sort of stuff when it really wasn't part of the original scope, and it could
No,
become a bigger project. And maybe the client is doing that unknowingly because the freelancer is just helping, and it just kind of grows into this other thing. And there's all sorts of nuances with this, right? Depending on like, well, are you charging, is the freelancer charging per hour or per project? So if they're charging per hour, then they just charge for their time, and then it's easy. But if it's project, then it gets a little tricky. So that's just where my head goes on a lot of this stuff.
Yeah, no, that's fair to say. I can understand. Yeah, but I've not had that sort of. I suppose I haven't gone down to that level of questions anybody much, but it's
Yeah.
more. But I can see where there could certainly be things like that come up.
Yeah. Yeah. All right.
Yeah.
Talk to me a little bit about, before we hit record, we started nerding out on WFX, and I was like, wait, what? WFX? I don't even know how we got on the topic. And you
It
were
was
talking
about
about,
the vertical integration thing.
yeah, you were talking about software that you use to manage. Well, you talk about it.
Yeah. So one of the things I identified very early on, in making a lot of this stuff, in the US or in the Western world, was there's no really provision for waste because it's too expensive. Like there's just no, that everybody's time's too expensive. Every shipping's too expensive. People, like materials are too expensive. Everything's just so expensive. So I needed to find a way of basically limiting, what I had on stock in the sense of raw material. Because in a world of making things in, the US, you're only limited to like particular styles and collections of like fabrics and whatever, like might have to have on site or on in the US in stock effectively. I'm got a massive factory where I can just have shelves and shelves of just, they go and grab that fabric, because I'm in India and I've got tons and tons of like textile places. I'm in downtown Seattle. I'm in downtown New York. I've only got so many different stocks I can draw off. So I wanted a way of making sure that I could produce my production runs without running out effectively, because I would have to reorder this stuff. And it could take like weeks or more, months.
Totally.
And that's not a problem when you're making this stuff in China or in India, because you're there. You literally just walk next door and grab more because it's there. Like, and it's totally the opposite thing, because if you're not making a lot of your fabrics locally in the US, you are having to import them, and a majority of them are. And even when you are making them in the US, you're only going to make so much because the production costs are so high that you just can't just keep making, because there just isn't the market for like that particular style or color or whatever it might be. But so I've basically thought of a way, well, what WFX does on a high level, and it's sort of something that works in with like an MRP or ERP like NetSuite, which big companies have, which I've used in other businesses, is I wanted something that would basically plan materials, which is what an MRP stands for, material planning reporting. Planning, yeah. So material reporting plan, sorry. That would basically allow me to input all of my designs, all of my patterns, all of my material consumption figures, which Alex has got the skills to create, because she has worked in those sort of worlds as well. And then that would actually tell me like how many centimeters of fabric, how many centimeters of binding or thread or buttons or pieces of buttons, how many care label, all that stuff.
Yeah.
And it would produce basically these manufacturing reports or orders, which I could then send to my manufacturer and say, you're going to need to make this, and this is what you're going to need. And then on the other side of it, it would spit out purchase orders, and I could say to the factory that's making all the raw materials, I need all this. And then it would feed it in, and basically it would concoct the recipe to produce finished product, which is what the factory in the US is making. So which would allow me to book a time in, a week in, or whatever production, and know in that week and that time I'm going to have everything on hand, and there's not going to be a phone call or an email, we've run out buttons.
Of this. Yeah.
Yeah. And that is a big problem with a lot of manufacturing, is that people don't plan and they get into it, and then your half-made products are sitting there, and that's costing money because you're doing someone else's job. So yeah, that's where I needed it on a low level, or a very low basic level, which is why I found some software that's very, very good. Integrates with my e-com stuff, and it means I can handle all the production and the ordering myself, and I know what I'm going to have on hand, and I can deliverable accurately plan and know I'm going to get that stock. And there's no like drawn out lead times, because I know I physically have, the goods. So,
and it's you said it's WFX, but I was like, wait,
the software I use Katana, which, so there's a few of them.
Oh, I thought you said WFX, and I was like, wait, I've used that software. It's $25,000 a year.
Yeah. So basically, WFX is a whole suite of things.
Yeah.
And once you graduate to your big brand, like say J. Crew, absolutely go and use WFX. But for a startup and for a small brand like me, I wanted effectively the same capabilities, but on a very low level and a very granular level. Because I don't have to have multiple people using it. So again, I don't need that high level view yet.
So what's it called that you use?
Katana. So there's a couple of them out there, but this particular one, Katana, is really good because it's basically it's got quite good integrations with like Shopify and stuff like that.
Oh, right. Okay. Yeah.
And it's quite low cost as well. So it's low cost, it integrates well. It has quite good units. It has the ability to use units for consumption. So like centimeters and yards and feet and all the different things, and liters or gallons and all this stuff. So you could create recipes in it that would make it was sort of loosely designed enough for fashion, and that's why I picked it, because
okay. How do you spell it? What is it?
Spelled with a K, Katana.
Kaatana.
So Kat, it's spelled Katana.
Oh, just Katana. Okay.
ANA. So Kilo Alpha Tango Alpha November Alpha Katana.
Okay.
And basically it's
Here we go. KatanaMRP.com.
yeah, that's them.
Okay. Yeah, we'll put that in the show notes.
Yeah.
Because that's a great resource for brands,
No
but
one-
also freelancers to help their brands manage.
Well, if you're doing like you know, if you're manufacturing in-house, then it's very handy. If you're not manufacturing in-house, it's probably it's definitely overkill. But I am manufacturing in-house, so I had the problem of having to manage all these fabrics and all these different materials.
Yeah, it's a lot.
But for someone that's just going out there and finding a factory and saying, here's my pattern, here's my tech pack, make me this, you don't need it because they're handling all of that.
Right, full package production. Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But I had no option. I was forced into, like, well, not forced, but basically
Encouraged into.
Well, because it was going to be a disaster if I didn't have some sort of management of how much fabric, because I don't know. Like, I look at a tech pack and I got the material consumption out for one pair of pajamas in small. Well, I could go to the calculator in a spreadsheet and then go, okay, well, that's this many centimeters of this color, but then I've got 5 or 7 other colors. Plus I need to make the same amount. It starts to get really complicated.
Yeah.
But until you actually see it and it's on the screen and you can see how it all works, it's actually quite simple, and you just got to enter all the data in. But yeah.
And like you mentioned earlier, you know, if you, let's say you were in India, you can just go right there and get it, but you're doing all this remote and everything's coming from a different place. So it's a lot to not just manage the logistics because of the logistics, but also then you got these physical logistics to wrangle. I'd love to hear a little bit, and I don't know if Katana does anything for you, but like how you have been working with like sampling and prototypes and fittings and stuff with, you're in the UK, Alex is in Pittsburgh, I believe, right? And your manufacturer is in Seattle. Those are not very close in the US. So like, how logistically are you manufacturing with all these remote freelancers, physical samples, prototyping, fittings, that type of thing?
So my product, my like collections, you know, and different designs and everything, have all been done in 3D for one. So that sort of starts to, you know, help the actual fit from the start, because we know it fits the virtual model.
Yeah.
So that limits any major issues and clashes and problems straight away.
Yeah.
The tech packs, because of my factory's experience with making things, you know, and they care so much about like making things right, is visually the first thing to do. The tech packs get printed out, or the tech packs get looked at by them, and any things that are like picked up are pretty much fed straight back to us before we even make a sample. So straight away some things will flag up on that. Then the sample is made. After all those things, virtual, all those checks, the sample is made, and as that's progressed, then things are still found. Maybe some sewing operations aren't right.
Yep. Yeah.
Could be and then what I have done generally is create a sample for me and a sample for Alex.
So you have the factory create 2 samples.
Yeah, and then they DHL it pretty much to Alex, or USPS it to Alex, and then DHL it to me. Yeah. Which, you know, it is a cost, but there's just no other physical way. Now, if the factory was in China, you'd be doing the same thing anyway.
You would.
So there's no real difference in that sense. And yeah, there is still a limiting factor that you physically have to try these things. You have to know that they're going to fit. So yeah, but we've been very lucky, and we haven't had to have lots of samples. Like, we've been very lucky. So with all my
that's
products.
great. And I'm pretty sure she uses Clo, right? Alex uses Clo.
I think so.
Clo 3D. Yeah. So it's just a question that comes up a lot. Freelancers like, wait, how do you do pattern making, or how do you do technical design remotely? Like, typically, the factory might be in China, but the design director, arguably you, right? And then the if people are used to working in-house, then the technical designer or whatever the company hierarchy is, right? But everybody's like under the same roof. And now everybody's under completely different roofs. And so it's just an extra cost of getting 2 samples. And then you guys each are looking at the same thing in real time, in real life.
It's just it's just a cost of doing business in the sense
Totally.
of there's no real way. The only way we can limit it is we inherently don't do massive changes to things, even when we're developing something. So we don't mess anything up in the sense of like make things worse because it's sent a sample and had a whole heap of things change. We don't know what's actually where the problem is. Or the other thing is any new collections is my idea of the brand's ethos anyway is sustainable, not using like having fast fashion, not having a million different variations. So the tech packs share pretty much a very similar sort of ethos. So like, for instance, we've done some shorts from pajama shorts from the long pants.
Yeah.
And the shorts are the same sewing instructions, right down to the fact that the only difference is the length, the leg, pretty much. There's a few little things, but such a small difference. So I know that I could make actually one sample of those, and that's all I need to make really for production. I probably won't even need to make a sample. I could probably just go for production, but I will make a sample because I'd like to have a pair of shorts. But like also, it would just be, it's just someone they say I trust that those are going to be okay because the rest of the waistband and all everything else we did in that world, we fixed any minor issues in the past.
Yeah.
So it's just when new products are being done, that's where I think, that's where the air freight and all the shipping and stuff can become quite painful because you're trying to coordinate getting this stuff from everywhere. But I've worked with like China suppliers in Asia and China and places over the years, and with automotive, and I know some of the frustrations people can have because you get stuff turn up and it's totally not right and it's totally like just disaster. And that's super disappointing, especially if you paid for it. Because that's where the control over like the tech pack and they're actually producing exactly what you want is sometimes really hard to sort of like get a hold of, where I'm lucky to have good people around me. We know that when it's in the tech pack and it's going to be made, like it will maybe made correctly. And also I suppose the other thing, right, rewinding to that point about freelancers don't care or whatever. One of them thing with my manufacturer, and even in Alex's case or any cases, I've had mistakes in the tech pack, and just the odd mistake that may be there.
Sure.
It's no one's fault, but it's been picked up by the seamstress because they're so experienced that they're like, this fly stitches, something's wrong. Like this shouldn't be this. This is wrong, and we're going to make this in production, but this isn't right. And then that's like a phone call or a Teams call or Zoom call or email. Stop making this. They don't make it. They'll actually come back to me and say or ask, "Oh, do you realize this?" Bounce that off Alex. Yeah, that's a mistake. Whoops. And then we go back. Yeah, we make it this way. Change the tech pack, revise it, and that's something that if you were dealing with someone like say overseas in a factory, they just make it wrong and they just send it to you.
They sure will.
Like, and then you're just like, oh, so you won't know about it until you get it, and you may not even pick it up because it's a stitch, right, or something. So that's a little bit about the manufacturing, I suppose.
Yeah. Well, you're smart to ask for the sample even on like a second run of production, because I have a really good friend who has her own brand, and she was doing her manufacturing in New York City. So it was still stateside. It wasn't over in China or anything. And she needed to order another round of production. She goes, I just skipped a sample just for time. And the whole production came out wrong because like they had new people on the line or who knows what, right? It happens. So I always say, no matter what, you get a sample and you approve it before production. Like no matter how amazing your factory is, no matter like, it doesn't matter. She had to offload the whole thing off at like TJ Maxx or something, a discount retailer. So it happens. So you're smart to do that, even though the extra expense of paying for the sample, paying for the shipping, etc. It's worth it.
Yeah, no, I agree. It's I think it's very thorough to have multiple samples just before
Yeah.
you produce stuff.
Yeah. Well, thank you, Alex, for coming on and chatting. It's lovely to hear about you and your story and your brand and what you're building. And I'm so glad you've had such great experiences with all your freelancers. That's phenomenal. It's not always the case. So you're doing something right. You've connected with the right people. That's really exciting. First of all, where can everybody find you and connect with you online?
Just go to charleswilliamalexander.co.uk or .com. And
Okay.
just there's an email address just in the contact thing, and just send me an email on there. I check the mailbox. So
Awesome.
that's, yeah.
Awesome. And then I'd love to ask you the question that I ask everybody at the end of the interview, which is, what is one thing people never ask you about working in the fashion industry that you wish they would?
Yeah, okay. Suppose, yeah, but I think is the question is like, is your brand going to become like massive or some like, because
Oh,
they think you're in
yeah.
the fashion industry, right? So they think you're going to be like some sort of like, I don't know, Calvin Klein or someone. I don't know, but like
What's
that's
your
something.
answer?
Oh, I just like I'm working pretty hard. That's what I usually say. Like, yeah, of course. Like, but I'm not really in my brand to become like the golden. I'm more in it because I like the brand, and I like the products, and I like the actual thing I'm making, and I think it's really cool.
Yeah.
I do other things as well, and I feel that it's sort of, it wouldn't be fun. CWA is supposed to be fun. Like, it's all about having fun. It's not about like just world domination or anything like that. Like, it's yeah. So that's something like that I sort of, yeah, remember.
Yeah, that's good. That's good to keep yourself grounded on that level. And it's great. I feel like people don't last very long in fashion unless they're in it because they just truly love it.
Yeah, I can see that.
Now you could see that after a couple years, right?
Yeah, I've got more passionate about it as I've grown. I've grown it. Like, it's always like, I'm someone that wouldn't be able to stop though, in the sense of designs, and I know I need to sort of like focus on current products and things as well, and I want to do more all the time, and that's the fun I like about it. And I think that's why a lot of people get the buzz from it as well, because they're creating something new.
Yeah.
And that is what fashion can be, because you're just not making the same thing time and time again. You can actually diversify and do different things, same but different sort of situation.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you for sharing your story. It's very, very inspiring to hear what you're doing and hear what your experience has been like.
Yeah, no worries. Well, yeah, anytime.
If you liked this video, you're going to love this one. Hit play now, and thanks for watching.